All right, we are rolling, and I don't know if I'm going to call you a celebrity, but Pete, you're probably the most famous person that's ever been on my show, and I'm probably the only person that calls you Pete. Everybody else that may know you knows you as Petey, and that's because it's your wrestling name. So I almost feel like it's only right to, introduce you as like, one of those like coming up next, but I don't know if that's really my thing, right? So anyhow, Petey Williams, thanks for joining, man.
Hey, how's she going, eh? I say that because that's how I always start every interview in my podcast as well and stuff. But and you aren't the only one that calls me Pete. On my podcast, Dennis, the main host, he calls me Pete because we're close, just like you and I, and yeah, everybody else calls me Petey. So it doesn't matter. That's my real name, so it doesn't really matter. But anyways, Joe, thanks for having me on the Cup of Joe.
Thanks, man. So, what's your podcast? Because I mean, obviously, it's all about my whole concept is like a little bit about business. Whatever. That's always where I'm coming from. Whoever I'm talking to, it's the thought of why I wanted to talk to the person was somehow related to business. Whether we talk about business is another story. So, what's your podcast? What's it about? And then we'll kind of go down that path.
Well, the podcast in its early days, I started it. So I retired from wrestling back in 2014. I had an old buddy named Dennis Farrell. He used to work for ESPN doing their podcast on like fantasy sports and all that kind of stuff. And then he did the Ford Motor Company podcast and all that. So he's like he was podcast before podcast was even cool. Like that
Sure.
that was him. So I don't remember. Like I was retired from 2014, 2017, and somewhere in that line, I missed wrestling. Obviously since I'm sure you watched it when you were like 6 years old too, in the Hulk Hogan era and stuff. I just that was my life. And then obviously I started different avenues, and then I retired, and then I missed it. And then he was like, "Hey, let's do a podcast." And I was like, "Absolutely no, 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 absolutely not. Don't want to do it." But then one day I said, "All right, let's give it a shot." And I really liked it because at the end of the day, and what our podcast is about is we talk wrestling. I mean, just like how you and I, talk wrestling. We're just recording it. I mean, that's all it was. And then we had a bunch of listeners and stuff. And anyway, so um, it's called The Wrestling Perspective. I kind of quit the podcast in 2020 because 2020 just sucked. I mean,
Yep.
COVID, all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. So I took a break from it. And then like pretty much last month in January, um, it might have been like at the very last week of December, we kind of started back up again. And our podcast is about wrestling. We have a good group of six of us. There's myself, Dennis, and then people that the listeners here, the viewers here may know is first Darren McCarty from the Detroit Red Wings, fourth-time Stanley Cup winner. We got Jason Kendall, formerly from the Pittsburgh Pirates. We got Dimitri Young, formerly retired from the Detroit Tigers. Once we got Lars Fredrickson, lead singer of Rancid, Old Firm Casuals, a slew of other bands. Like he's businessman 101. So that's who we got, and we talk wrestling. We kind of all geek out for each other because they're huge wrestling fans, so they're always wanting to pick my brain. Obviously, you could tell by the guitars and stuff, and knowing me, Joe, I'm a huge fan of music, and obviously I listen to Lars and Rancid growing up, and then obviously I think you and I've probably been to a baseball game where we watched like Dimitri Young, on the
Yeah.
field and stuff. So
Yeah.
um,
Full
and
circle.
hockey games too. I mean, Darren was already retired, but still, we've been to Wings games and all that kind of stuff. So um, that's pretty much what we do, what we talk about. We have guests on our podcast. If you're interested in wrestling or just seeing these guys shoot the breeze, you could download us on YouTube. We just started a channel like last month, and it's called The Wrestling Perspective, and you could subscribe and listen. We throw out at least one show a week, sometimes two. Sometimes all of us aren't on there. That's the benefit when you podcast with six people. If two people can't make it, okay, great. Four of us will be on. So I'm not on every one. I commit pretty much one time a week to that just because of all the other things going on. we're all busy.
Sure.
But that's what it is. And we're always looking for more listeners, and we have a phone in number and all that kind of stuff. If you want to ask questions and social media, you name it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the thing today, right? Is interactive, in some manner, whether it be, swipe up to comment, whether it be, commenting on a YouTube page. I mean, everyone wants to be able to have or feel like they have, the ability to talk to whoever it is, whether it's someone with 7 million or 70 million followers or someone with 7 followers. So that's pretty cool, especially the phone number, because everyone's not, even today in 2021, everyone's not social media friendly. So to have the dial in number, which of course is, at least as old as us, right? Like we used to have a phone number to call and try to get what the inside tip was on wrestling this week and stuff like that. So kind of funny. It's almost like even a throwback to those types of things. So, it's funny. You and I have we obviously met and as neighbors and things like that, and we've talked tons about wrestling. Yet I don't know if I've ever asked, and it's really was one of the things that was kind of curious about here was you said it. I was probably a 4 or 5 or 6 year old Hulkamaniac, and liked the Ultimate Warrior and just loved wrestling. And as a kid, when you'd go to career day or whatever, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was like kids want to be an astronaut, kids want to drive a monster truck, and I wanted to be a wrestler, right? But I got older, and it wasn't that I didn't want to be a wrestler; it was that I didn't think it was possible. It was like I don't even know how you do it, right? How did you go down that path of saying, I'm going to figure out how to do it? Like I'm going to learn how to wrestle. I mean, how do and this is actually even kind of pre-Google, right? So this is like the 90s. So you're not Googling it. So how'd you go down that path and decide, yeah, I'm going to stick with this?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I don't know. I think we were only at like, it happened on a WrestleMania. I remember that. Uh, yeah, I don't know if it was like WrestleMania 15, 16. I was only like 18 years old, I think, at the time. And, but going way back when I was 6 years old, when I saw my first like wrestling video that my, I don't know, grandpa or dad showed me or whatever back, the VHS videos.
Yeah.
And I just, fell in love with it. I was in awe of like, some people like GI Joes or superheroes and all that kind of stuff. Well, these were my superheroes. This is, people that I looked up to. Obviously, anybody from our era, they were Hulkamaniacs, just because, WWE, WWF at the time, their business model was, um, this is going to be the guy that you cheer for. This is the guy that we're putting the machine behind. This is the guy all the merchandise is going. This is the guy we're going to portray as the Superman of our company. And we all bought into it, right? Back in the 80s, early 90s, we all bought into it. So I want to do that since I was a kid. Obviously, everybody wants to, when they're a kid, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a pop star. I want to be a rock, whatever you say. Me, I want to be a wrestler. And then, right when I was about, it was 95, I remember, because it was that Woodstock #2, 25-year anniversary. I kind of stopped watching it. I started getting into music and stuff, and my buddy at the time wasn't a wrestling fan, and he said, it's not cool to like wrestling. And at that time in '95, the the business was down. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it really isn't cool. It didn't become cool again until that Attitude Era that I'm sure everybody knows, like Stone Cold and The Rock. That's when it started getting cool again. So I kind of stopped. I kind of, got into girls and stuff like that, and just took a different path. And then all of a sudden, right before the Attitude Era, I kind of got back into it. A couple of my buddies that I was in high school with, they were like, um, who's this DX group? Who's why is Mike Tyson in wrestling? Who's this Stone Cold? And they started liking it. And I'm like, oh, is this cool again? Okay,
Hmm.
cool. I guess it's okay to watch now. Um, so then the passion happened again. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. And, I remember I was 18. I was at this bar in Canada. You got to be 19 to drink, but you could be in the bar just like in the US, like at 18 years old. But the owner kicked us out, even though like we were paying customers, we bought food. He said, um, we couldn't stay there for the full 3 hours of WrestleMania because he wasn't going to make any money off of us. So, we left. I watched it at home, but during that time when I was at the bar, there was a flyer on the table, and it said Border City Wrestling, and it had like it was like black and white. I think it was black and white, but it had all these names, and I was like, I don't know if they had like Honky Tonk Man on the show, like somebody that was old school that we grew up watching was on the show, like a mid card type guy,
Sure.
and then a bunch of other local guys. And I'm like, whoa, look at this. And I'm with my friends that like wrestling, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to do something like this. And the guy right next to the table just got lucky. He was like, hey, are you serious? Like, you want to be a wrestler? You want to train? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, we'll call that number and ask for Scott Demore. And I called it. I asked for him. It's back in the landline days. I left a message. I think he called me back a little bit later on the next day, and he said, "Okay, you want to be a pro wrestler? Kind of talking to me about the price and stuff. Asked me how old I was. He's like, "How tall are you?" I'm like, 5 foot nothing. And he's like, "How much do you weigh?" I'm like, 100 and nothing. And he's like, "All right, well, you got to put on size." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And he's like, "All right, I'm gonna be out of town." I think this is when he was working for WCW at the time, doing enhancement stuff. And he said, I'll get in touch with you. He never got in touch with me. And then, at the time I'm working out, I'm getting into shape. I started working out, I think, uh, like a year prior, because, I really wanted to pursue this. I didn't know how. Like, this was my
Yeah.
in. And it's different now. You can just like go online and be like, hey, will you train me, kind of deal. Yeah, you got the money. Okay, let's do this. Like, nothing like that.
Sure.
And I went to this local, really small gym, and the guy working behind the counter, he was like the desk clerk slash the personal trainer slash the janitor slash everything, right? Um, and I worked out late at night, and he was a wrestling fan. We started talking, shooting the breeze and stuff, and uh, we both kind of said we want to. And I think any wrestling fan is like, I want to do this, right? But nobody really pursues it. We both said that to each other, and then he actually ran into a guy at like a store that worked there, and he was a local wrestler. And he talked to him about that, and he said, "Oh yeah, we have a training facility in Windsor, and there is one." I had no idea before that, like this hidden training facility. It's like a fight club or something like that. And um, he was invited there. He went. I asked him how it was, and he said, "Yeah, you're invited if you want to come try it out and stuff." And I went, and um, just gave it my all, and the rest is history, I guess.
And so for anyone that doesn't know, so yes, you're from Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and so you eventually start working for, at the time, TNA Wrestling, which was total nonstop action, but obviously was a cute play on TNA,
Mhm.
especially based on what the era that we were kind of coming out of, but still somewhat vulgar, moving away from some of that, thanks to some of the sponsors over at WWE not wanting to pay. It's like Snickers, supposedly, not wanting to pay millions, and then have two women coming out with practically no clothes on and performing sexual acts and blood and all this other stuff, right? So now we've got this cute play TNA, but it's not on TV, right? It's pay-per-view only. Like, the model doesn't even make sense to me. Um, Here you have the largest promotion in the world, and they're on TV at the time once or twice a week. Again, we don't really have YouTube and stuff like that. And then you've got there's always been smaller shows. Whether those smaller shows, I mean, when you're comparing it to potentially 20,000, small could be, I guess, 10,000. It could be 10, right? So there's always been smaller shows and companies out there. How in the hell does pay-per-view only pick up enough steam that eventually becomes a legit competitor for a while on TV, with great wrestling? Actually, there was actually quite a few great wrestlers and wrestling matches that went on, in this time frame.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I should mention, sorry, and I should mention also a six-sided ring instead of a four-sided ring. So it's
well, it started off with a four-sided ring, but we'll get to the six side and how their thought behind that. Um, so I believe the two main competitors at the time with the Monday Night Wars battling back and forth. Was WCW and WWE. They're y- going back and forth, and I think like WCW won for 82 weeks, and then all of a sudden it turned around, and maybe it was 86 weeks, and then that turned around, and WWE had the steam, and pretty much WCW is out of business. Bad business model when it comes to WCW. They signed a lot of guys, gave them a lot of control of storylines and stuff. So a lot of leaders, not enough followers, and they couldn't. They were handcuffed. They couldn't write the best show possible because I know they have tried before. I've heard stories from them, and they say, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be a perfect show," and then somebody will edit it. It's like, "Yeah, we can't do that because that guy hates that guy in real life, and they won't work together." And then this guy refuses to, lose, and that guy's like just so much stuff, and it ties, it handcuffs them.
Sure.
So they went under. I can't remember. I don't know if it was 2000 or early 2001 before the whole 9/11 thing, but um, they went under. And then in 2002, so now they have a monopoly. WWE has a monopoly, and there's nothing else, not on TV, anyways. So then fast forward to 2002, Jeff Jarrett, formerly from WWE, but he was also in WCW, now he's working back for Vince McMahon and stuff like that. But before, he held him up for a bunch of money and stuff, and just they had a really bad falling out. Bridge was burned, all that kind of stuff. So a
And we
lot of
should
the
know,
guys,
I don't mean to jump in and cut you off, but we should probably know Jeff Jarrett had quite a name through Southern promotions, big promotions outside of WWF, WWE, and even WCW prior to. So, he comes from kind of a history here and almost kind of like a more of a caricature of his actual real character, when he was on WWF as, the country singing, almost like a repeat honky tonk man type thing. But the point, I say all that just to kind of point in, like, obviously I know some of the story here that Jeff was not just some random wrestler dude who was disgruntled that decided, to go down the path that I think you're going to lead us down. So,
yeah, no, and he wasn't. But I mean, right now you have a lot of talent, and that's what we call wrestlers, talent, out of work. A lot of guys had from Turner Broadcasting, they had a lot of guaranteed money contract where they just had to sit at home for a while and collect it. If they chose not to do that and work for WWE, then that contract was null and void, and then they wouldn't get all that money. So a lot of money was thrown around at this time. Um, but then a lot of guys that were kind of like mid carders, they were just kind of okay, like what do I do now? And there was a lot of up and coming stars now that you'll see on WWE and Impact Wrestling and all over the place now. Um, but in 2002, Jeff Jarrett decided, he's like, hey, we can't get a TV contract right now, but what we can do is we can buy pay per view. Like that's how you can do it. Like anybody can get a pay per view if they got the money. There's a satellite feed and stuff that costs a bunch of money, but um, it's pay per view. You are paying for your success or failure. In TV, it's a lot different. So they did that from 2002 to about 2004. I entered TNA at the time in 2004. It was February, and that day that I came in, and they were, like you said, they were very R-rated, sometimes X-rated. There was a time that before I got there where there was a female in the ring. I don't know if she was with another female, but then the top got ripped off, and then the exposed breasts and stuff, and that's what they're going for. They're like, we're on pay-per-view. We can give you great wrestling. We can give you X-rated, R-rated type stuff. We can swear. They can't do that on the other one. That's how they're kind of battling it. And we're still in that era where Jerry Springer, like that
sure.
smut television, was still kind of cool.
Yeah.
So they did that. The day that I went there, I think they started going PG. There was no more swearing. They had cage dancers. They were clothed, but very scantily clad.
Yep.
They were gone, and it's because at that time in 2004, they started teaming up with, or the big sponsor was Panda Energy, and Panda Energy at the time was one of the top 5 energy companies in the United States, and they were based out of Texas. And people probably know the story. Dixie Carter was the one, was the daughter of like the head of Panda, and like this was kind of her project. And then she had all the leverage and just, I guess, the people that she knew. And then that's how pretty much it was June of 2004, like very first week of June. That's when we did our first um, televised, like on national television show, and it was on Fox Sports Net, and it was an hour show. We still did the weekly pay-per-views because um, I don't know why exactly, but we did the weekly pay-per-views on Wednesday. That was still going on, probably because we were still trying to. We got buy rates from it, so we were still getting money in that and all that kind of stuff. So they probably didn't want to immediately get rid of that. So we had the year contract with Fox Sports Net. That was from June, and then with that, that's where the six-sided ring came in. You know, we were still called TNA. And then right now, at this point in the company's history, now we're starting to backpedal with that name. You know, obviously you use that name if you're going through the channels on direct TV or whatever, and you see, oh, what's TNA? What's TNA wrestling? And I don't know why they thought that, because if you turn it on and you're expecting to see a TNA, you know what I'm saying? Like that bad kind, and you turn that on, you're like, what is this? You're going to be more upset, I feel. But
Yeah.
you know, it's just to catch the eye and catch the viewer. That's what they were going for.
Yeah.
And you know, and eventually their business model did change. We were very PG. We went down and we were filming at Universal Studios in a soundstage. So we're very Disney at this time. You know, it's still a little edgy, but we're not swearing on the air. We don't have, you know, the R and X rated type stuff that we had going on. And then eventually, shortly, and the six-sided ring, going back to that, all it was to do was, if somebody's looking at this on television now, on network television, oh, what's this six-sided ring? This doesn't look like WWE with a four-sided ring. So they just want something. They're doing anything to catch the eyes of viewers.
Sure.
And then come, I think September, we dropped the weekly pay-per-views. We were just doing the TV, and then we went to that, you know, WWE business model where we would do a monthly pay-per-view and hopefully get more buy rates with that rather than like spread them out throughout the week. And obviously we would build up our television shows towards the monthly pay-per-views. And that's kind of the model that we still adopted. And it wasn't until later on when we had, you know, Hulk Hogan and stuff step in that they totally dropped the TNA name, because you know, it's tough when you have Hulk Hogan and you're going into a business meeting looking for sponsors, and they're like, you know, Mr. Hogan, like, explain what this TNA thing is. And then the first like 10 minutes of the conversation or whatever it is, he's pretty much explaining how it's not what you think. And he has to explain how pretty much what I just explained, like, no, it's not that, it's this. And this was our business model before. We're switching it around. And that's why we're called Impact now. But yet, if you watch the show, you could see that we're still mentioning TNA because it kind of has a cult following. People remember TNA, and you don't realize at the time that you're making history and you're doing something good in business, and people are going to remember it. But when you look back on it, people are like, "Ooh, I wish they were still TNA again." People always want something in the past that happened in the past. Like, I want it to be like that again. I always want. It doesn't work that way. We can only go forward, but um, yeah, the business model has always changed. We even went to Global Force Wrestling at one point and merged those. And oh man, a lot of stuff. They've been around now for, I think, well, it'll be 20 years next year. So
Yeah, sounds right.
it
Yeah,
seems to be a pretty good business model.
which is a long time in this industry, you know, to be a legitimate, you know, name, be on TV, that type of stuff. I mean, again, if anyone's got the money, they can put a wrestling ring. You see the backyard wrestling on, you know, back in the day on VHS, now on YouTube. That's not wrestling. You know, I mean, it's some sort of performance, but that's not wrestling. And so anybody could do that, but not anyone can have a business that is generating, you know, income for 20 years or almost 20 years. So it is definitely something. And here's the other part about your business that is always, so I say I wanted to, and maybe I would have gone to the school had I known it existed. And of course, it was probably 20 minutes from me since I grew up in Detroit. But before you get to TNA and after you learn a little bit, I mean, you are wrestling like in gymnasiums and, you know, VFW style halls. and you are performing in front of 100 people, and you are performing in less than conditions overall, right? Because it might be someone who didn't even know they were coming to a wrestling show. It might be someone who decides to get loaded up on booze and go, watch the guys. Or it could be great fans, the best fans of all time, but yet you're in a place that the ring isn't, staying together. It's harder than normal. What in the world, after you get started, makes you say, "I'm going to keep doing this"? That's,
I mean, it's different. Everybody loves, you know, I feel like something in their life that everybody has goals, or at least people that are motivated have goals. But everybody has a goal, like whether it's getting out of bed every day or whatever the case may be. My goal. This was my goal when I first got into the wrestling business. My first day at the school, like even before walking in there, I told my mentor, my trainer Scott Demore, I said, my goal is to have one wrestling match in front of a live crowd.
mhm.
That's it. That was my goal at the time. I mean, I started off small and it got big. Um, and I know, like at the time when I broke into that business, um, my style of wrestling, the cruiserweight, the lightweight, wasn't a big thing. Even across the world, now you have guys like Conor McGregor who are the top draw of UFC and stuff. It's not the heavyweights or whatever. It used to be like the
Mhm.
Ken Shamrocks and stuff like that. Even with boxing and stuff. The Mike Tysons and the heavyweight, Evander Holyfield, all that kind of stuff. But now, who's the biggest draw? It's the guys that are. I mean, we're not going to talk Tyson Fury and stuff, but the biggest draw is Mayweather, right?
Right.
And he's smaller than me. So I mean, it was a big transition where I think people were tired of just watching okay, this is kind of boring. I mean, they're just waiting for that knockout punch because bigger guys do move slower. Not Mike Tyson, but you know what I mean.
Generally.
And now they want more excitement. That's just how we evolved. Even anything in life, everybody wants stuff now. They want it fast. They want it, like all that kind of stuff. So it evolved. So at the time, when I was breaking in, that was my goal because I never thought I would make it anywhere close to even television. I'm like, oh, I might be able to be a referee someday. Um, but I never thought of that. And even with Demore, he's a very smart businessman. He has a bunch of businesses over in Windsor and stuff like that. Um, he's a very smart businessman. He understood that I had the passion, the drive to succeed in this business. Um, but wrestling in front of all those, like you said, those gymnasiums and stuff like that's part of paying your dues. When people start a business, and that's pretty much what I am. I'm an independent contractor. I am my own business pretty much. Um, you have to start out small. I don't know anybody that's like, a Jeff Bezos or whatever. It's like, yeah, I started with millions and millions and billions of dollars and everything just worked. No, you got to start somewhere, have the right team, get lucky, and go from there. So I knew I had to pay my dues. And after I had my first match, I'm like, ooh, I want to do this again and again and again. And at the time, I'm getting my education in school, getting my degree and stuff. And Demore, very smart businessman again. Um, Even though TNA was around when I was still in school, he didn't want to take me there. He understands that the business of wrestling is so fickle. It can go up and down. I'm very grateful that I'm still in it. 21 years later, but he understands that you need something to fall back on. So he made sure while I was training and doing paying my dues and doing my independent wrestling circuit, um, he said, finish your school. That's what he did. And that's what I did. And once I finished it, it was almost immediately. A few months later, he was like, hey, there's an opportunity for you in Impact. I think it would be good for you, or TNA at the time.
Right.
And I went down there and things just happened. I got very lucky. I was able to think on my feet and stuff. And it was pretty much sink or swim. That's what the business is. And I think that's what any business is. You either sink or you swim. And they put me on the spot very quickly. I told you the story before, Joe. But it was like, if I don't succeed right now in this next 20 minutes that I have to prepare for this match, they're never going to look at me the same again. And I was able to do it, and that's part of paying your dues, wrestling for years prior before you get there. Just like if you're a businessman, if you're in real estate or whatever, if a curveball gets thrown at you in your first year, you might not know how to, hit that. But 4 years later, you're like, okay, I have the knowledge, I have the know-how, I know how to, you know, go forward from here. Um, so yeah, it's just about paying your dues, being smart when it comes to business, and succession planning. Pretty much, like right now, uh, even though I took a year off of wrestling because of COVID, I'm back. I am not wrestling. They want me to wrestle, but it's just not the right time for the company, anyways, because everything that's going on, they're merging with other businesses right now. If you're following wrestling, um, but I'm doing a lot of production and backstage stuff, um, and just my track record. Even though I've been off for a year, the more trust me so much that probably the biggest match that we just had in a very long time in our company, he put me in charge of it behind the camera, like live, making sure that all the stuff is being portrayed right of the story that we're trying to tell to the fans. So that means a lot to me that I've built my independent, contracting status and my business and me and who I am so well that people know what to expect, uh, when they ask upon me for things.
Sure. Which, so again, let's assume that at this point, anyone listening's a wrestling fan. You see the same thing with a lot of guys, and sometimes when we see a match, we know probably who booked that match or wrote that match or whatever because of how it goes. Like I guess I won't go into like specific examples, but there's just times where you have an idea that the talent or the match was done by Triple H versus Vince McMahon, was done by, maybe Cody Rhodes versus Chris Jericho, things like that, right? Not because one guy's good and one guy's bad. You just kind of start to learn their styles and see matches and have an idea at times, who kind of put those things together. Um, and so, so yeah, so now you're kind of like corporate, right? Behind the scenes, Petey. And, but that's like, I mean, that's something you've kind of had a knack for. Again, just me and you talking. I know that you've always been one of those guys that people maybe would, tap your shoulder and talk to you about the business, and it's at the minimum say, "Oh, it's an interesting, it's an interesting take," or actually put things into the matches that you were seeing on TV. So you've kind of been involved with some of that even before now. Um, is it harder or easier than being out? I mean, technically speaking, we're not performing. You're not performing in front of anybody live right now, but you will be again. So we'll just assume, is it easier to be behind the scenes, running things, or out in front of people where literally the camera's on you, and if you make a mistake, 100% people see it.
I mean, they're both hard in their own sense. Uh, sometimes I just want to do my match and go home and just worry about me. I'm sure if anybody listening has been a manager or a supervisor in any role, um, you realize that other people's problems become your problems to manage, and that's what it's like. But every other job that I've had, I've always been in a supervisor management role. I always get stuck into that. It's not like I always get forced into it pretty much. So, no, when I first started doing the production, I was actually not working for TNA. It might have been like 2009 or 2010. I worked for this company called Lucha Libre USA. We filmed in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they were on MTV2. I think that was their home. And I came on their season two, and their big business model was tapping into the Latino fans. So the good guys were the masked wrestlers, Latino, and then I portrayed, don't know how, because everybody knows, if they know me, they know I'm Canadian 100%, right? I played this like evil American, right, where I was like super right winged. um it's back when the immigration thing was pretty big in like 2009, 2010, and there was a representative, I don't know, senator or whatever the case may be, Jan Brewer, and the guy that I was teamed with, uh, and our faction was RJ Brewer, right? That kind of thing. So we were super against immigration and stuff like that. That was our business model, and it got a lot of fans behind it. The reason I got into production with that is that a lot of at that point I have been, on TV every single week for like, 5 years. So even though I never was a producer, I understood what producers are looking for. And then when I see the wrestlers go out there and it's really weird because all the fans are behind you, so you want to turn around and you want to acknowledge them, and there's nobody here. There's maybe a couple rows, but that's where the millions of people are at watching. And when I'll see everybody playing there, I'm like, guys, yeah, that's sweet. There's like hundreds of people back there, but there's millions that you're missing in the camera. And I just got fed up. I'm like, if I'm going to be on the show, and be in this business, I want it to be the best possible, show that we can put out. And then I kind of, told, the head vice president, and I said, yeah, you're doing A, B, and C wrong. And I didn't know how he was going to respond to it, but then pretty much, the next day I talked to him. He's like, "Hey, do you want to produce for us?" Because they realized I had the experience, and then from there, everybody's got to start somewhere. Like I really didn't know what I was doing, right? But I kind of winged it at the time, like just fake it till you make it. And then when I went back to Impact, um, Scott Demore knew I used to do for his local TV show. I used to do some production, and it was the same thing. I was actually wrestling, active wrestler full time, and having to wrestle multiple. The way our business model is we'll film multiple shows in like a few days so that they'll air. Saves on travel, saves on everything, right? Hotel costs, all that kind of stuff. So we'll film multiple shows and then air them at a later date. And Scott was like, "Hey, I know you said you're interested in agenting here and producing here. Do you want to take my match over for me?" And this is before he was the vice president. He was working his way up. And I said, "Yeah, sure." And who and when? He said, "Yeah, it's between Seidel and Desmond. And okay, when you up? I think they're up next. So I think you got like 3 minutes. So get with them." And I'm like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things again. They put you on the spot, sink or swim. And it was kind of sketchy a little bit, but I did not sink. And then now, they understand, that they can utilize me. And right now I'm just producing. Throughout my career from 2017 till 2020, I was doing both. Like I was literally producing a match, getting dressed, wrestling, um, telling the producer of my match what to do, what to do, and then um, not even getting undressed and running back to the production truck to do the next match. And it's just chaotic for hours on end, but I loved it. I mean, that's if you love your business that you're in, you're going to do that type of stuff. And the problem with this business is nobody likes to help each other out, because if you teach somebody your skills, and I think this is in any business, if you if you taught me all your skills, Joe, you'd be like, "Ooh, now I'm in competition with them because we live in the same market," all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So, but I don't care about that stuff. I've learned from you know, my mentors and stuff to pay it forward. And a lot of guys that never have, done production before, they get hired on and as a tryout, and I'll take them to the trucks. I'll show them how to do it and stuff like that. And these are guys that I used to look up to. And then sure enough, they get hired by WWE or something like that. And that's happened like several times in this case. Um, so that's to answer your question. It's easier on my body to just do the production. Obviously,
Right.
it's just a different sort of, not stress, but it's just different.
Yeah.
Doing both is whew, um, that's a tough day at the office.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine, especially because your style, like you said, is more, a little bit more flying fast through the ring, some acrobatics, things like that. So there's not, if you slow down and put some guy in a headlock to catch your breath, you're losing your fans. Whereas maybe if like the Undertaker does it to Kane, no one thinks anything of it because these are two 6'10" guys, and you think, oh, there's a big, powerful guys, so he's just trying to kill them. Whereas when we see guys that are 6 feet or 5'9" or even 6'2" sometimes, so some of these guys are so monstrous that a 6'2" guy seems small, right? And so you start seeing that, and you want the action. When do we get to the point when it's too much action? I mean, I've been to a couple of our Ring of Honor shows, and it's like, backflip after backflip after backflip after backflip after. I mean, I could probably say that word 10 more times.
Mm.
It's kick out after kick out after kick out. Like not every single match, but there's a lot of them. And at what point, or is that just that's Ring of Honor, that's their thing, and maybe some other companies. At what point do we start to see that type of evolution of, okay, we want to see Petey's Canadian Destroyer, but I don't want to see you hit it 3 times and still not win your match too. Um, I always find that part interesting. So now we're getting a little bit more geeky about the business,
Yeah.
but
Um, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to tell a story. We're trying to, get the viewers, the fans, and the audience involved, like emotionally connected. The good part about the wrestling business is we have the opportunity to do that. Unlike, you know, I shouldn't say real sports, but unlike unscripted sports. So, every single match we have the opportunity to say, okay, it's the bottom of the ninth, bases are loaded, full count. You're down by 3. Okay. This last pitch is coming. We can create that every single match if we want to. So that's what it comes down to. And if you've ever seen that scenario, at a baseball game, everybody's on their feet waiting, like, holding their breath and stuff. That's what we strive for. And we fail a lot, but sometimes we succeed. And that's what it comes down to. It's not always about, like, who's going to do the most athletic thing. I am not the most athletic guy. I've at the time I was, but now these guys, like, I look at some of these guys, I'm like, I don't even know how you do that. Like, you must be a gymnast or something. Um, so I don't know when is too much. As long as it makes sense and you're telling the story, then yeah. But I've always told all the younger guys, I'm like, this ain't a race, it's a marathon. You don't want to just race to the next, the action or whatever. You need time, fans. You need time for the fans to react and people to, like, acknowledge what you just did, and slow down and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the mentorship comes into play. And I think right now, like last year in 2020, 2019, the Canadian Destroyer, that flipping pile driver that I started using in 2003, it was all over the place. Now you don't see anybody do it because they kind of killed it. And that's what happens in this business. You're looking for reactions and stuff and people to talk on social media. It's a different business now. Um, and the gifs, whatever you want to call them, that wasn't around when I started, right? So, people are just, I guess, doing their matches like, oh, this is going to be a good gif online or whatever, like a little good snippet, and then people are going to see the views and all that kind of stuff. That's what everybody's shooting for nowadays. But then you have guys that, make the most money in this business. Like, the John Cenas and the Randy Ortons and the Edges, they don't do any of that stuff, but they're really good at telling a story. They're really good at getting people emotionally involved and invested and connected to them. And that is the core of pro wrestling. Um, and that's what we're always striving for in this business.
so you started going down a great path, I think. So first of all, so you're part of an organization that is still growing. Everybody's still growing, but still growing, and on TV. You guys have recently cross promoted with um, one of the other really large companies, AEW,
Mhm.
and then we've got, of course, WWE. And with no fans, we're only watching it on TV. Nobody's going, so you can't judge gate. Like, are people interested because it sells out or what have you? So we're only known by TV. But like, one of the things that is really interesting, I mean, I'm in a little Facebook group of wrestling fans, and honestly, we trash WWE probably more than we, say things good about it. It's just they have the opportunity for more home runs, kind of like your bottom of the ninth, opportunity, right? So they still have a great program because they still have some great things. They just have enough crappy things that makes fans, pissed. But anyways, point is their ratings are down. Yet somebody literally, while I was like, getting ready this morning, posted that they're getting like 2 billion YouTube views a month for their content. Um, that's a lot of views. That's a lot of views.
Yep.
Is there a movement? Are you thinking like, we need to be performing more for the internet than we maybe need to be focusing on TV? Not no, I know your TV sponsors don't want you to say yes to that, but you know what I'm saying. You're performing in a way that you're at least combining the two, thinking some of this has to be really good for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever the hell, and then some of it's going to have to be good for TNT on Wednesday night.
Um, well, I mean, I don't think it'll affect our sponsors because I think,
You're not watching this right now.
yeah, right. No, Impact is this, Impact's a subsidiary of, uh, Anthem, uh, Entertainment that's based out of Canada, and then they're, I don't want to get too into it, but they own a portion of Access TV. I don't know if they're majority holder, as well as like Mark Cuban and Steve
Right.
Harvey, like they own portions of that too. So when you own the television network, obviously you don't want to upset your sponsors and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, if before the internet, all we had to judge success of a business or a television product is ratings, the Nielsen ratings. And I mean, I don't know how accurate those are back then or even now.
Right.
You had a few people with the boxes and stuff like that, and they're, I guess, judging the demograph. I mean, whatever. Um, Now they're actually able to, based on downloads, they can track every single download and every single view. That is way more. Uh, like it pinpoints, like the numbers don't lie, pretty much. And now you look at somebody like in AEW or whatever, and they're, when they have 850,000 viewers or a million viewers, they're like, that's a success. Whereas back before the internet, you had wrestling, and WWE was doing like millions and millions of viewers a week, and yeah, their ratings are down, but that's why they're branching out into like NBC and Peacock and stuff like that, and their own network, and yeah, you need other avenues because think about it, everybody's a cord cutter now. I don't even have cable,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
mean, I get my stuff through the internet and other things, and the Netflix and all that kind of other business models. Just that's what's evolving. And yeah, the cable companies, I do feel, are in trouble because they're even like HBO. They're like, oh man, and that's why they had the HBO Max, and they're switching their business model. Everybody's switching their business model. So, and like back when we were after Fox Sports Net, we were on Spike TV. Our ratings, they said were horrible, but we're getting like over a million, over a million viewers, and they're saying that's bad because WW was doing like 3, 4 million.
Right.
Now the same ratings would be considered, would be the top of the industry. It's
Yeah.
just it's changed. You look at the 2 billion views a week or whatever you said, 2 million views a week. That's a more accurate representation of who's watching the product. And I look at the Impact channel, and we have, I don't know how many subscribers, millions of subscribers. It's like it shows that okay, our business model is successful. Not everybody gets Access TV that we're on, and that's why we have our own Twitch channel, and you can watch it for the cord cutters out there. You can watch our product on Twitch, and we can get downloads there and all that kind of stuff. So we're in a very interesting era right now, where it is a huge transition, and especially we're more virtual now than ever with COVID. I mean, it's almost like, uh, is there going to be fans again?
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
It'll be really interesting, I think, because I know that people want to go to big events, right? if somebody called me right now and told me that I could fly out to Tampa for the Super Bowl, but I have to be within 6 feet of people and I can't wear a mask, I'd probably take my chances. I'd love to go to the Super Bowl. It'd be awesome.
Mhm.
Um, but if somebody said, I'll give you season tickets to the Lions next year, any team, I'm just using the Lions. Same rules apply. I'd be like, no, are you crazy? Like, I'm not doing that. Right. So with that being said, you know, I would be interested in going to, say, a WrestleMania, assuming that I can buy some energy drinks because they're like 27 hours long now. But I'd be interested in going to a WrestleMania, but I would not just go to a house show right now, a packed house show. Like if it was literally available, say April 1st. So it will be really intriguing to see what happens as things open up and as people can get back to things. I know everybody would love to quote return to normal, but I also think that there will be some things that people are going to just say, you know what, it's just not worth it anymore. It was always gross being around all those people, anyways. It was always gross going to those packed bathrooms, so forget it. So yeah, it'd be really, really intriguing, and especially as you said with the TV stuff slash internet, you know, um, maybe a new revolution. I know it's a term that's been used in the industry, but a revolution around the industry is coming soon, if it's not already happening now. I don't know.
Yeah, and it probably is. I know, we have the vaccine going out. I mean, I don't want to talk about COVID or the vaccine or anything like that because everybody has their. um
Whitmer, let's go down the
no, let's not talk politics. I'll just I for certain reasons I did get vaccinated. I got my second shot coming up, and it's just I did it more for other people, especially if I'm going to be in the wrestling business and stuff. I believe I'm probably only the only person on our roster that's uh, been vaccinated. But I mean, we take proper precautions. We're doing COVID testing and stuff like that there. And I feel even if you like when I go to the gym, as soon as I check in, they take your temperature via the electronic what and everywhere you go. And it's I look at it like 9/11. There was no TSA before that, and now it's like okay, everybody needs a sense of security to show that it's safe, and that's what we're doing with the temperature checks and stuff. Um, so, for me to get vaccinated, you could say what you want about it. I'm not here to argue with anybody about that if they're for it or against it. I did go back and forth, but it just shows that, like, okay, if that's what you believe in, I care enough that I'm going to get vaccinated and
yeah,
go about our business and stuff. And maybe that's what it comes down to get all the fans back in, to go back to normal. I know, like when I was younger, there was no chickenpox vaccines. I got it when I was older. I was like 14 or 15 and it maybe 16, I don't know. But it was like the worst ever because when you get older with it sucked. And my brother, who was 7 years older than me, got it from his son, and he was like in his early 20s and he was hospitalized,
yeah,
and now they have vaccines for it. Now there's nobody gets chickenpox anymore, right? And like it's just really weird. Like even though it's just so weird to me that we're on lockdown because the chickenpox was a thing and it can kill, like really kill, older people. Um, but we weren't locking down over that stuff. Like that's what I kind of relate it to. But um, I'm really hoping the day we get the fans back. It is very, very, very weird when we're filming this stuff and there's no fans in the audience. We just recently started piping in the crowd noise,
yep,
so it doesn't seem as awkward when you're watching it. That the just so you know, the wrestlers can't hear it when you're watching it on TV, nor can the commentators if we're doing it live. There's no crowd noise. That you hear a pin drop, right? Uh, but when it comes across on television, you can hear the crowd noise and people know it's fake, but at least I think it adds to the product. Everybody knows wrestling is predetermined and scripted. So yeah, the crowd noise is, fake
sure.
too. So I mean, why not? We're all in this together, right? Um,
The one thing that made it, because like watching football games and there's all this noise, and I'm like, wait, So was the noise ever real? Like it makes you start wondering. I mean, of course, it's not as loud and stuff, but I just assume they turned the volume down then. So it's kind of interesting. And of course, I think WWF has didn't. I don't know if they were sued, but I think they got in trouble for fake noise back in the day, didn't they?
Not in trouble. They just they were the people were calling them out. I'm like, you have a crowd, but they're not cheering the way you
Okay.
want them to cheer based on your story. Um, so like they just kind of got called out, like, hey,
All right.
why are you doing this, right? But this is great because now you can do whatever you want. This is perfect for WWE because they've always had problems like people cheering or booing
Sure.
the proper people. So now they could dictate all that, and that's beautiful for their business model, right? They're like they don't have to work. Part of it's like, man, and part of it, this COVID is good because before we used to have to wait. We had to try to cram everything in before the crowd, like all the stuff that we're shooting before the crowd gets restless and wants to leave and all that kind of stuff. Um, hold on a sec. You're and and now you don't have to worry about like any of that pretty much. Yeah, I mean I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry, my dog was barking.
Yeah, no, you're good. Well, it's funny because we're again in a little Facebook group. We're kind of talking a little bit about the lack of fans and that there's allegedly going to be 25,000 at WrestleMania and whether that's a real number, blah blah blah. And I brought up this idea of you know in one part it's cool because you know things can't be chanted that are completely unnecessary,
Yep.
but on the other part, as a fan who maybe didn't want Roman Reigns to be champion a few years ago, imagine no fans to boo after The Rock comes out at Royal Rumble and helps. That entire storyline is different. Vince gets to push Roman the way he wants because he doesn't have fan feedback. Or Daniel Bryan probably is never in WWE is never good, right? We know he's a hell of a guy, wrestler, everything outside of it, but without the Yes movement, he probably never gets the WrestleMania spot and the championship belt, which was like really successful for them. But he never gets that chance, most likely, especially because Vince likes the 6'10", 325-pound guy all the time. Not just like I mean, if given the choice, two equals, I'll take that monster too. Because it's amazing to see him work, but that's not always the case. Anyhow, so I think UFC same thing. 1 minute, it's awesome, man. You see the guy, he gets kicked in his ribs, and you hear that slap, and you're like, holy crap! But then you miss the fans who all 20,000 go ooh at the same time, right? And they've talked about how the guys in the ring, octagon, whatever, they hear the announcers, and so they can hear, especially if they've got Daniel Cormier, Joe Rogan, some of these guys that know just about everything, especially if they hear him pointing out what the other guy's doing, they make the adjustment better than if their coach told them about it. So
Yeah, you can hear everything.
there's ups and downs, when it comes to that aspect. Obviously, there's no real upside to COVID, when people are dying of it and stuff like that. But when we're looking at it from this side, there's ups and downs to the fans or live crowds, being at things and stuff like that. So I guess we've been pretty serious. What's probably like the worst, silliest thing you had to do as a performer? That you're like, I can't believe this is what I'm gonna do, but hey, I'm getting paid and I love the business.
Oh man, there was several of those. I mean, just I mean, I had to shave my head on TV. I had long hair. Like I thought that was ridiculous. They shot me in the back with the paintball gun and the bareback, like but I'm like, this is ridiculous, but I understood the story we were trying to tell. And that's what it comes down to. So I mean, that's a lot of silly stuff. It's even going back to when I was in Lucha Libre USA, I'm like, I'm playing the super right winged like American,
Yeah,
like and you guys are saying I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona, and everything. I'm like, I've never even been there in my life. Like we're insulting the intelligence of the fans. Anybody that would recognize me knows that's not me. I've been flying the Canadian flag for like 21 years now.
Yeah.
Um, so it is what it is. I get, you know, paid to do it. So those silly things, but that's pro wrestling. It's silly. Um, but the silliness really makes it, like the genuine reactions from the fans. That's organic. That's something that you know you can't write as like a script writer or whatever. What you said it best, like whatever happens, like people, and that's what gets people emotionally invested too. Watching at home, it's like, wow, you know. But then when you have that fake crowd noise, it's like, okay, that's how we should be cheering. But maybe inside, I don't
Yeah.
like it. It's and people know it's fake.
And it
But
could be just going off the internet because we know there's plenty of trolls, right? There's plenty of people that log on to the most popular thing that's ever happened and just say terrible things about it. There's also people that will log on and probably say good things about terrible things. They'll watch a terrorist attack and have they think they're funny or whatever they think, and they're
yeah,
so to just use the internet is tricky. So you kind of need the live crowds for your sport, your entertainment. Um, to get the honest feedback. Hopefully, I guess you never really know, because the fans always have in mind what's best. It's just like we're all better general managers of the Lions than any general manager has been.
yeah,
We're better players than people, and we're clearly better writers for wrestling than any of you guys have ever been.
yep.
I've been watching it my whole life, man. I
Huh,
know what I want. I know what's good. I know what the people need. So
yeah, you could do my job, no problem,
yeah,
easy.
it's easy. It's easy. It's fake anyways. So um yeah, man, that's it's an interesting sport. You kind of started like how for a while it wasn't cool, and so I never would talk to people about it. And then all of a sudden all you could do was talk to people about it. And now you're kind of at a point where there's so much reality TV that it's like, I think Jim Gaffigan has a joke like everybody likes McDonald's. It's just your McDonald's is People Magazine, and my McDonald's is actual McDonald's, and your McDonald's is wrestling. Like we all have something that's not good for you or we shouldn't be doing that we're doing.
Mhm.
And so whether you're watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians or you're watching AEW on Wednesday nights, I mean, you're watching something ridiculous that probably is not really useful, but it's entertaining. And it's fun. So I'm glad, personally that you're back, in the business, so to speak. I think that you bring a lot to the business. I mean, I don't know enough other wrestlers to compare, but I just know through conversation, with you over the years and hanging out and just going grabbing dinner or whatever. I know you have a lot of good insight, and I know that you have, back to your original point of why you'd go and wrestle in a gymnasium is because you love the business. So, I think that's obviously first and foremost. Anyone who's doing it for a paycheck's never going to be good at it, whether it's, my business, your business, or anything else. So I think it's awesome. When is there going to be more? I mean, I know there's one kind of like mixed, show. Is this going to continue with Impact and AEW, or is it going to go Impact and New Japan, which just merged with somebody, or kind of like what's the thoughts? Any idea?
Well, I mean, they're kind of leaving me in the dark, which I'm glad, because I like to be surprised too. In a business that I used to grow up watching, I loved it for the surprises and stuff. And then when you're part of the show, it's like, okay, there's no surprises or whatever. That's kind of a downfall, but you get to be part of it, so that's cool. Um, but no, I mean, I didn't know when when Kenny was there. I didn't know they were going to give me Kenny Omega's match to do. I had no idea. And then the next day when we taped, I didn't know Matt Hardy and the Private Party from AEW were going to be there. I didn't know Tony Khan was going to be there,
Yeah,
or Jerry Lynn, and but I got to produce all of them. Like it was great, like kind of like a bucket list or whatever. So I don't know what's going to happen when I go down there next week. We'll film another set um, of tapings. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with New Japan. The only thing I can only speculate. So I know, like, the Good Brothers, people that don't know them, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, they're kind of worked for New Japan. They just got, done with WWE. Now they're full time with Impact, and they're, merging over to AEW. They have their hands in everything. That's awesome. And uh, now you have Kenta from New Japan showing up. But then again, if you watch, and not safe for work, but if you watch their Talking Shop of Mania pay-per-view that they came up with, that's like, I think it's the funniest thing because they mock wrestling, and
Yeah,
to me, it's hilarious. It might not be hilarious to you because you're like, what is this silly stuff? But to me, it's hilarious because I get to like sit there and enjoy it. But, Rocky, who is with the Good Brothers there, he books the, New Japan. So obviously, we're all kind of in this together. Um, we're all okay with sharing talent. It seems like, again, this is all speculation, and it right now it just seems like, and it goes to play really good with COVID, with all the small businesses shutting down like all over the place because we're on lockdown, and all the big businesses just getting more and more rich and stuff. Wrestling's kind of relating because WWE's the big business, and everybody else underneath, like the AEWs, the Impacts, Ring of Honor, New Japan, all that kind of stuff. We're the little guy, and we're banding together to take on the big guy.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So that's a story in itself. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I won't know until next week what's going on. I won't probably won't get the scripts until like I get down there. So I don't know what's going on, and I'm excited to see. And I mean, it's it'll be interesting if New Japan guys show up and stuff. It's exciting. It's an exciting time in professional wrestling. I hope this is like the big turn, like back in the Attitude Era and stuff. I hope it brings more eyes to the product and people can appreciate it. And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day.
yeah. Well, I do think, as you said earlier, there's tons of talent available now. Um, and I don't know exactly why. I don't know if it's because everyone grew up um, watching the biggest probably explosion of wrestling, so they want to get into it. I don't know if it's because a lot of athletics and they can't go to that next level, whether they're football player, gymnastics, doesn't even matter, dancer, something that they're athletic and they need another outlet. I'm not sure, but I do know that there's a lot of people out there, even not on TV, signed by the companies that they work for, let alone people that aren't even signed yet. So it seems like, and I think the people that have liked wrestling are looking for it, but I just don't know if I don't know if anyone. I know I don't know exactly what I'm looking for because I don't want quote the Attitude Era again. It's like that was awesome, but you can't replicate it, so kind of don't try. You know, so it's like when I can sit here and say, "Well, I'm waiting for it." It's like, well, what am I waiting for? You know, but I just know that there definitely is the opportunity for that explosion to happen again. And I do think, personally, I do think it makes tons of sense to have some sort of crossover and cross promotion going on. I realize there can be a lot of issues with that for various reasons. Business wise and non business wise. But to do it even just a few times in a year, I think is beneficial to the business. And I think is beneficial for the talent when we know that you can't do that type of thing through WWE. And maybe you'd love to. Maybe, they would really, really love to wrestle somebody else and they're never going to get that opportunity staying on that program. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities out there. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes. Yeah. So I guess at that, man, I think we've ran a lot longer than I thought or than I told you. So I appreciate you sticking it out with me here.
Yeah, hey, no problem. I'm used to the podcast industry now.
Just sitting and talking.
Sitting and talking. Hence the microphone and the camera and stuff. Like, why did I invest in this? Because I sit and talk a lot now.
Yeah, no, I got to get a new one. I bought one. I tried it like 3 different times. Then I just went with it and I noticed the feedback myself. So I got rid of it. And it was more expensive than the one you told me you bought. So I'll have to get yours from you when we hang up here.
I'll
So
send you the link.
awesome. Hey, thanks for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And we will chat soon, my man.
All right.